Canada, absolutely furious at the United States, but sending a very strong message after Donald Trump was rebuked in the American elections with that blue tidal wave that took place on Tuesday. So what happened the next day in Canada? Well, the Maple MAGA movement in Canada, led by Pierre Poilievre of the Conservative Party, they look to be in collapse mode as Prime Minister Carney was able to convince a Conservative member of Parliament named Chris D'Entremont, who was kind of more of a moderate conservative, not a Maple MAGA. They call it the kind of the red Tory tradition in Canada. But he switched parties to the Liberal Party in Canada. And now Prime Minister Carney is a step closer to securing a majority government in Canada. So not just MAGA falling apart in the United States, but Maple MAGA is just one or two members in that Conservative Party away from collapse. The video we're showing right now is the moment that we saw Chris D'Entremont greeted with applause, a standing ovation, switching over from the Conservative Pierre Poilievre party over to the Liberal Party right there. And then Prime Minister Carney had very strong words about this current situation. And I think he was buoyed. He was bolstered, knowing few things. One, that the American people hate Donald Trump, hate Trump's tariffs against the world, but also the Supreme Court oral arguments seem to just totally rebuke Donald Trump's unlawful tariffs against Canada and the rest of the world. Here's what Carney had to say. Let's play it.
Let's be clear where we are. We're in a situation where the change in U.S. tariffs, where the uncertainty caused by all the changes in the world and all the pressures in the world are holding our economy back. We choose to move forward. We choose Canada. We choose with confidence to invest in Canada. And that's what is going to bring us the prosperity that Canadians deserve.
More from Prime Minister Carney here. The question from the reporter was kind of asked in a rude manner, and he wanted to test Carney about Keynesian economic and being a Keynesian economist. And then Carney's like, just shut up for a second and let me just explain to you what we're doing here. Just play this clip.
I said a moment ago about what a crucial time this is, and over history of nations, they're punctuated by hinge moments, times when the future hangs in the balance and when our actions must be decisive. Canada is facing one of these moments right now. Technological change is accelerating, the world is more divided and dangerous, and the global trading system is literally being rewired, threatening jobs and businesses under a cloud of uncertainty. These profound changes demand a bold response. And that's what we got yesterday. Canada's new government tabled our first budget. We presented a clear picture of what's happening to our economy and what's being taken from us. It's estimated, you'll find in the budget, it's estimated that U.S. tariffs and the uncertainty that they're creating will cost us around 1.8% of our GDP. Let me translate that. That's about $50 billion lost from our economy, or the equivalent of $1,300 for every Canadian. Now, while we can't control what the U.S. does, we can decide what happens here. This is Canada, and we can build the future we want for ourselves. We can get that money back and more.
I want to bring you now the leader of Meidas Canada, Charlie Angus, former member of Parliament, leader of the Resistance Meidas Canada tour, which is packing venues across Canada. Let me just get your reaction first, Charlie, and what do you think the Canadian people are thinking as they see this massive repudiation of Donald Trump and MAGA in the United States?
I think what we've seen, people are talking everywhere about the election in New York City, Madami. The fact that Democrats came out strong is reassuring, because there's moments when we're thinking, what the hell is happening on the other side of the border? And what do we need to do to hold our own? I think this is going to strengthen definitely the resistance, but also probably give more power to some of our political leaders to actually now step up and start thinking that Donald Trump can shout and holler and threaten and do what he's going to do. But obviously, his behavior has gotten more erratic and more disgraceful, and Canada needs to start deciding where it's going. And we've already made a very clear commitment where we're going. We're moving on, but this could start to play out in the long term in a much better way.
You know, the Conservative Party in Canada made a bet all in on MAGA a while, during the Biden years. They were getting more aggressive in that direction. Pierre Poilievre embraced the same MAGA playbook, the Elon Musks, the right-wing podcasters, the conspiracy, the lies, the hate, the division, the Putin stuff. And now Pierre Poilievre is finding this division that we're seeing. It's similar to what we kind of see in the United States. I did this video with a guy named Adam Kinzinger, calls himself the last Republican, and that was what the documentary was called. It reminds me of the red Tories like D'Entremont and others who were like, I don't want to be affiliated with this MAGA thing. That's not conservative, and they're going to the Liberal Party now. Do you think we're going to see more of that? How do you frame that? Obviously, Canadian viewers may be more familiar with this. So sorry, Canadian viewers, if you know this stuff already, but how do you see this playing out? And from an international audience, how do we view what's happening in Canada right now?
Well, first off, the big issue is, can the Prime Minister survive the budget? We are in the Westminster tradition of parliaments, like many of the Commonwealth countries. So if the Prime Minister brings forward a finance budget, anything to do with finance, if it doesn't pass, if it's defeated, that forces an immediate election. When you're in a minority government, you don't have enough votes to pass. So this has happened many times, and it means compromise. It means some other parties will demand a huge benefits in order to support a vote. But with Pierre Poilievre, he's been dead set against every single thing the Liberals have done. This has put Mark Carney in a difficult position. Will he survive the budget or not? So, out of nowhere, maybe not out of complete nowhere, but he gets Chris D'Entremont to cross the floor to go from being a Conservative to a Liberal. So now he's only 2 seats away. This makes it a lot easier for him to go and pluck 2 other Conservatives, or maybe someone from the Bloc Québécois, because there'll be a lot of favors for their constituency, a lot of payback in terms of being able to show that this member of parliament came back and is delivering the goods, which is what every MP wants to be able to do. This is putting Poilievre in a really bad situation. And I think what we're seeing here is that Chris D'Entremont represents this old guard of decent, likable Conservatives. I mean, I used to work with many of them, and all of them have been pretty much pushed to the margin, while Poilievre has really pushed the conspiracy nutters, the attack dogs, vicious, dumbed down politics. And I think now that maybe, just maybe, there's those in the Conservative movement who are thinking, we don't want that anymore. And Ben, I think it happened when Poilievre came out recently, called the former head of the RCMP despicable, and said he wanted, because the RCMP hadn't arrested former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. You're in a moment when you start to think, does anything someone says actually cross the line anymore, because of all the insane and dark and hateful things we see all the time? But that certainly crossed the line with a lot of people, and some senior Conservatives went public and told him to apologize, said this is a step way too far to attack a former prime minister, say he should be jailed, to attack the head of the RCMP. So it looks like, in Conservative country right now, the blood is out. There's blood in the water. So Poilievre is going to be doing a defensive battle. His own caucus, his hardliners are going to come out way harder. So I think it's going to be hard for him to pull back. And meanwhile, Prime Minister Carney, if he gets this majority, it's going to be good for him, because he's going to escape a freight train of diminished expectations of what's going to be coming in the next number of months. So a very dramatic moment right here in Canada.
I could be reading it wrong, so push back on me if you will. It seems that in Canada, and I even feel this way here in the United States, that the criticism against the Democrats here was, you're really not fighting back against this fascism and authoritarianism enough, and be stronger and louder and prouder about your values and ideals, and stop living in kind of their frameworks. And it just seems to me, whether it was here in the United States or in Canada, regarding this idea of democracy and empathy and equality, and I use it globally, we're like psyched out by like what this right wing was saying, and they created this feeling of inevitability that their ideas were more popular than they actually were. And there was this timidity in living in these right wing frames. And I think here in the United States, it's like, just go back to fighting for people and talking about the issues that matter and actually delivering for the people, and stop with the culture war nonsense and whatever. So like, to me, when Carney stands up to Trump and stands up against it, I think that he's at his strongest. And then sometimes when he gets a little bit like, I called up to apologize about the Reagan ad, I think Canadians realize it's part of a bigger plan, and it's patience and kind of playing Trump while these other global deals. And I think people recognize that Carney's more sophisticated than but I still think that people are like, we're prepared to sacrifice in order to not be under this gangster's thumb. I think that's a sense out there when I hear from Canadians.
Well, absolutely. I think, Canada was sleepwalking to a disaster. We would have been gone down the MAGA rat hole if Pierre Poilievre had won, and he was going to win. And then Trump showed up and started insulting us. And you saw this complete transformation of Canadians who were cranky, Canadians who weren't sure what was true anymore, who were much more susceptible to sort of the possibility of rage politics or cynicism politics, suddenly realizing we've got to stand up and defend ourselves. So Poilievre did not make the shift, and he continued with the rage politics, and it just started to really piss people off. Now, as for Prime Minister Carney, like when he apologized to Donald Trump, it really angered Canadians. Canadians did not like him apologizing. Canadians would rather get punched in the face 5 times by Donald Trump than to apologize ever. But what's interesting is that I think Canadians feel, well, the Prime Minister shouldn't have done that, but we're going to give him a chance. There's this sense right now in Canada that they're giving Mark Carney space to do what he needs to do, which is why in a minority government, these failed expectations catch up to you pretty quick. I think with Mark Carney's decision, he's going to cut an enormous amount of public service jobs, which maybe in the United States, you guys be glad that we have as many public service jobs, even if many of them are going to get cut. But in Canada, people are going to start to see disappeared services, things that they count on. These are going to be the cost of paying for getting through these tariff wars and building up our military and building our strengths. And so Mark Carney is going to start to face a lot of pressure from people, particularly the progressive voters who went all in on Mark his supposed progressive credentials. So right now, he's got this really interesting moment where people are giving him the benefit of the doubt. People say, okay, well, maybe he's trying to be the adults in the room, and we'd rather someone go and punch Donald Trump in the head, but maybe we'll trust the Prime Minister. But he needs to get this majority in order to get some breathing room, because otherwise in 5 months he'll be into another potential election again with another financial statement. So it's Canadians are willing to do their part. Canadians are willing to take a lot of pain. Canadians are willing to back their Prime Minister. But what Canadians do not seem to want to be willing to go into is any more Pierre Poilievre's culture wars. And with Pierre, he's a one-trick pony. You take culture war and rage politics out of Pierre Poilievre, and there's nothing left.
Charlie, before we go, want you to direct a message to Donald Trump and his regime. We know they watch Meidas Canada. They watch these videos. What do you want to tell them before we go?
Well, Donald, I think the whole world watched you and your grotesque Great Gatsby gathering with all these barely clad young women and creepy old men at the Mar-a-Lago Roach Motel where you live, and thought, this man doesn't care about his own people as people's food supports are being cut off. He doesn't care about his veterans. He doesn't care about anything except himself. And we look at you, Donald, and we see a diminished man. You're not a leader. Come on, Donald. You're just a creepy grifter. And you think that you could push us around. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen, Donald. So we expect that you are going to start to do more erratic things as your numbers start to fall and more people turn against you. We expect that you will probably try and make us more of your enemy in order to divert attention from your own disgraceful and disgusting behavior. But whatever you do, Donald, Canada's moving on. Canada is looking at this in the long term. We're willing to suck up across party lines, across many different parts of our ideological spectrum, to put Canada first and do the right thing. So again, as Winston Churchill said to Hitler, you do your worst, sir. We expect it, but we will do our best, and we will always do our best.
Charlie Angus, leader of Meidas Canada, which I may add is about to hit 200,000 subscribers on the Meidas Canada YouTube channel. So everybody, after this video, please subscribe to the Meidas Canada YouTube channel. Also, check Charlie Angus out when he's traveling Canada, filling up auditoriums near you in the Resistance Meidas Canada tour. Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks so much.
Everybody hit subscribe here, and let's get to 6 million subscribers.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.